South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott is poised to make history in November as the first black politician to win a statewide election in his state since Reconstruction. But some don't see it that way. Democratic Congressman James Clyburn complained to the Washington Post, saying this: if you call progress electing a person with the pigmentation that he has, which is black, who votes against the interests and aspirations of 95% of the black people in South Carolina, then I guess that's progress. So is this over the line? Is Clyburn playing race politics? Joining us now for debate, RNC Deputy Press Secretary Raffy Williams and radio talk show host Richard Fowler. Thanks both for joining us. First to you, Richard. It seems to me that Senator Scott can have any political opinions he wants. Just because he's black doesn't mean he has to believe one set of things, does it?
No, I agree with you. I think because he doesn't have to have one political view or another political view. I think what Representative Clyburn was trying to say is that what we've seen from Tim Scott and his voting record is a voting record that votes against not only African Americans and Hispanics and LGBTQ folks, but a voting record that votes against the 24% of South Carolinian children who are in poverty. And I think that's the problem here. His voting record doesn't speak to the issues of the state, and that's the problem.
But Raffy, that's not, I mean, that may or we could debate whether that's true or not, but that's not exactly what Clyburn said, at least as I read it. He was saying he's black, he's got to vote a certain way, no?
I mean, that's what he said. He maybe wanted to say something else, but what he said is the bottom line, and that Tim Scott is fighting for South Carolinians, and that's his job. That's what he is supposed to do, and he's doing that through a jobs program, job training bill he just signed with Cory Booker, and he's doing that through education access, which is supported by the black community overwhelmingly.
So, Richard, this is not exactly out of the blue. You hear this stuff all the time, really ugly stuff aimed at black conservatives like Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice, who's routinely called horrible names. I won't even repeat them here because he diverges ideologically from the majority of black voters. Isn't that a sign of progress that you have a black American who's got his own views on things? Isn't that what we want?
Well, I don't think that's what we're arguing against. I have no problem with Clarence Thomas having his own views. I have no problem with Tim Scott having their own views. I think the argument that Clyburn is trying to make, and folks in the civil rights movement are trying to make, is that when you have a member of Congress that votes against protecting people's voting rights, or you have a member of Congress that will cut WIC programs or cut programs that benefit the African American, Latino, LGBTQ community, you have a serious problem on your hands. And I think that's the argument that representatives are trying to make when they call out Clarence Thomas or they call out Tim Scott for their horrible decisions they've made on the Supreme Court or the horrible voting record that they have in the United States Senate when it comes to the issues that are affecting the inner cities.
But this is all subjective, isn't it, Raffy? I mean, there's no consensus on whether WIC programs are good for anybody. They might be a disaster. I mean, right? Can't we debate this stuff or no?
We should be able to have a debate. And these are two people, both Supreme Court Justice Thomas and Senator Scott, who came up from nothing. They've achieved the American dream, and they've seen how they've done it, and they understand how they best can expand access to the American dream for all Americans. Doesn't matter what color or race you are, and that's what they're going out there and doing. So people who are saying, oh, because he did X, that means he doesn't like black people, that's just not true. They're working hard every day for them, and they embody the American dream more than most of these other people.
This guy's getting, look, he's getting mau-mau. This is racial bullying. Clyburn wouldn't have said this if he was white, and you know that, Richard Fowler. Come on now.
Listen, like I said, I don't speak for the representative or I don't speak for what he said, but I think the point he's trying to make is the same. You have a member that votes against the interest of African Americans. When people in South Carolina are standing in lines for hours and hours and hours to vote, and time and time again. But that's not true. That's not true. Programs that allow expanding voting for people does not fail. The Voting Rights Act is not what I would call a failure, but Tim Scott has voted against it and he's tried to obstruct it multiple times.
No, wait. So why are you obstructing school choice then and not allowing access to kids to get the best education possible so they can succeed? Well, why are you preventing that? Why in the tank of the teachers' unions instead of fighting for kids?
Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. We're mixing apples and oranges. But let's talk about school privacy if we would like.
Crisp response.
Look, when we're talking about access to public schools, what we need to do is we need to invest in our teachers and treat our teachers as professionals, and that's what we're not saying from Tim Scott.
Gentlemen, thanks for the debate. I appreciate it. We could go on much longer.